So each of you does really interesting work in your own way, and it's kind of like, each of you works kind of in a way that's different than just like what a lot of people do as a typical job, and each of you kind of has your own path of how you got here. So can you each talk to us a little bit about like kind of what made you want to get into the line of work that you are in now? Let's go this way this time. Myron, you please start.
Yeah, so it actually is connected to what I just said. So I was a student who was a traditional student in school. So I went to Calvin Coolidge Senior High School before it got renovated. So I'm kind of jealous that it's renovated now. And I was a traditional student, so I could like excel at traditional ways of assessments. But I had a lot of friends who were really stand-up young people and very great artists, could have been future engineers, but unfortunately, our school system hadn't yet figured out how to assess intelligence in multiple ways. And as a result, many of my friends turned to different institutions in order to be socialized, and some of them being the streets. And so when I was in school, my teachers automatically expected I was going to go to college. Like there was never a question. It was like, you're going to go to college, but some of my friends didn't. And so I remember skipping school when I was 14 to go bury one of my dear friends, Walter Jeffries, who grew up in the Briggs Park neighborhood. And I was trying to figure out like what was the difference between my experience and ultimate outcome and his. And the only thing that I could really trace it back to was the expectations of my teachers. And so at that point, I had made a commitment to ensure that if I am going to be in a classroom or with students in some kind of way, then I wanted to make sure that all the teachers had high expectations.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll say that, with college being a real awakening for me, when I graduated, I didn't know what is a white African-American studies major going to do. And so I worked in nonprofit. I look back on it. I worked at H.D. Woodson in like 2001 for Hoop Dream Scholarship Fund. And that was a real eye-opening learning experience, meaningful experience. But I look back on my 20s as a kind of nonprofit white savioring, experiences. And so I would just say in the last 5 years with the Black Lives Matter era, really feeling all kinds of anger and helplessness and wanting to answer that call from Black friends and activists of, why don't you go work with your own people, And so that's kind of the idea. And also showing up in DC, I feel like, there's a campaign for Brooklyn Manor and Empower DC, and yeah, exactly. And so I feel like I'm trying to, it's not like leading dual lives, but I feel like doing the work with white folks is in a way showing up for Black people and people of color, and it's also not, and I think it's also important to like literally show up with your resources and in friendships and with love to Black people and Indigenous people and people of color. So I think like I'm kind of trying to close that circle where working with white folks, like it comes around. So
Great. Michelle?
Yeah, I spend only some of my time with white folks, to be honest. So I spend some of my time in traditional practice, shamanic practice. I spend some of my time working with groups, movement groups, around transformations they are trying to embody and live into. And to me, the deepest love letter to Black folks is trying to get white folks in order. So I have a theory of change around, I'll put it this way, as someone who is self-identified and identified as a Black healer, I can continue to spend my time supporting Black survival, Black resistance, Black resilience, which is like fundamental. But there's a point where I'm just like, what is the root here? And to me, the root of white fear, white rage, and the protection of that power that's been accumulated through white supremacy has got to be addressed. And to me, that's a healing issue. And to me, my theory of change around actually really not only eradicating white supremacy, but creating these universes that many of us are already trying to occupy. That's about well-being and joy and collectivism, of which I think many Black, Indigenous, and other people of color are already living. We've got to help white folks figure it out. And when I talk about white folks, I am talking about it in the spirit of whiteness, of being a particular way in which folks are conditioned. But, I mean, folks who are privileged with whiteness, right, are not only conditioned that way, but there's things at stake, right? That's where the fear and rage come from. So I'm really interested in allowing folks to get deeper to the pain, get deeper into the sense of loss and grieving, to get deeper into actually being connected to oneself so they can be connected to those of us who do know levels of connection, can be connected to each other, to the earth, and to futures that actually sustain all life, right? So that is my love letter to Black people, is actually helping white folks heal in a deeper way. And that's come mostly because I'm very, very suspicious of a lot of the anti-racism work that's been led by white men over the past 2 decades. Like, for what? What do we have here? Black movements that continue to move things, Indigenous movements that continue to move things. So I think, and Jason and I had a conversation about this recently. It's really important to have accountable relationships to people of color while white folks are doing this work, but white folks have to do the work.
Very good.